December 20th, 1943, 12:47 p.m. Over Bremen, Germany. Franz Stigler's finger rests on the trigger of his Messerschmitt Bf-109's cannon. Through his gun sight, perfectly framed, is an American B-17 bomber. It's the easiest kill he'll ever have. The four-engine Fortress is flying at barely 200 feet above the German countryside, slow as a dying bird. Its tail is shredded, the entire rear gun position simply gone, torn away by cannon fire, leaving jagged aluminum edges that catch the weak December light. The port wing has a hole you could drive a truck through. Two of its four engines are dead, the propellers feathered and still. Black oil streams from another, painting a dark streak across the fuselage. The bomber is flying on borrowed time, each second a mathematical impossibility. Stigler closes to 50 meters. This close, he can see everything. The starboard waist gun hangs limp, pointing at the ground. The ball turret underneath rotates aimlessly, its guns tracking nothing. No defensive fire comes. The Fortress can't fight back. It can barely fly. Standard Luftwaffe protocol is clear. Finish them. A crippled bomber today becomes a repaired bomber tomorrow, carrying more bombs back to Germany. Mercy is treason. Hesitation kills your comrades. But as Stigler pulls his Messerschmitt alongside the bomber's shattered flank, he sees something that makes his breath catch. Through the massive holes in the fuselage, he can see inside the aircraft. A wounded gunner slumps against twisted metal, his flight suit dark with blood. Another crewman kneels over him, trying to apply pressure to a wound, his face white with cold and shock. In the cockpit, visible through the shattered plexiglass, the pilot is hunched over the controls, his oxygen mask hanging loose, flying on willpower alone. The co-pilot beside him has his head tilted back, unconscious or dead. Stigler pulls even closer, 20 meters now, flying formation with an enemy. The pilot's face turns toward him. Their eyes meet across the space between aircraft. The American is young, maybe 23, 24. His face is streaked with blood from a head wound. His eyes are hollow with exhaustion and pain. But there's something else there. Not fear, not surrender, just recognition. One pilot to another. For a frozen moment, Stigler sees not an enemy bomber crew, but 10 men bleeding and broken, trying desperately to get home. They're not carrying bombs now. They're not a threat. They're just trying to survive. The bomber isn't a weapons platform anymore. It's an ambulance, a flying coffin keeping wounded men barely alive. His commander's voice echoes in his memory. Gustav Rödel, the man who trained him, the finest fighter pilot Stigler ever knew. Rödel's warning was absolute. You are fighter pilots first, last, always. If I ever see you shoot at a man in a parachute, I will shoot you down myself. The old fighter aces code was simple. You fight armed enemies in fair combat. You don't murder helpless men. Stigler's finger tightens on the trigger. One burst, 2 seconds, the Knight's Cross. He has 27 confirmed kills. He needs 28 for Germany's highest honour. This bomber, this helpless, crippled Fortress, would be his ticket to glory. His name in the newspapers, a medal from the hands of Hermann Göring himself. But to take that shot would be murder. The young pilot in the B-17 is still looking at him, not begging, not praying, just waiting, accepting whatever comes. There's something in that gaze that cuts deeper than flak, deeper than fear. It's the look of a man who knows he's done everything he can, and now his fate rests in someone else's hands. Stigler thinks of his older brother August, shot down over England 3 years ago. He thinks of every funeral he's attended, every empty chair at the officers' mess, every friend who climbed into a cockpit and never came back. He thinks about what his brother would say if he could see this moment. He thinks about what kind of man shoots wounded enemies in the back. The Messerschmitt's engine thrums. The bomber staggers through the air, each second a small miracle of damaged aerodynamics and desperate will. Stigler's formation flying is instinctive now. He matches the bomber's crawling speed, his fighter hanging in the air at the edge of stall, wingtip just meters from the shattered American aircraft. His radio is silent. No orders, no witnesses, just his choice. Franz Stigler takes his finger off the trigger. Then he does something that could get him executed. He doesn't peel away. He doesn't return to base with a report of a damaged enemy fleeing toward the coast. He closes formation tighter, positions his fighter on the bomber's wing, and prepares to escort it. Not to a German airfield, not to capture, to safety. The American pilot's eyes go wide with disbelief. Stigler catches his gaze again and nods once deliberately. Then he points toward the North Sea, toward England, toward home. If German fighters spot them, they'll both die. If coastal anti-aircraft guns see an enemy bomber, they'll shoot without asking questions. If Stigler's commanders discover what he's about to do, it's a firing squad. The penalty for aiding the enemy isn't just death, it's disgrace, dishonour, family shame. But Franz Stigler has already made his decision. Honour isn't about following orders, it's about remaining human when everything demands you become a killer. He throttles back to match the bomber's dying speed, checks his fuel gauge, enough to reach the coast, barely, and settles into formation. The B-17 wobbles through the cold December sky. Stigler flies steady beside it. A guardian where there should be a hunter, a protector where there should be an executioner. In the cockpit of the bomber, Second Lieutenant Charlie Brown can't process what's happening. His head wound throbs, his vision swims, half his crew is bleeding. His aircraft should have fallen from the sky 10 minutes ago. And now a German fighter pilot, an ace by the look of his aircraft's markings, is flying formation beside him, shepherding them toward home. Brown's training never covered this. His briefings never mentioned enemy mercy. The propaganda never suggested that somewhere inside the Luftwaffe's most lethal fighters, there might still be men who remembered what honour meant. He keeps flying. Stigler keeps pace. And together, enemy and enemy, they begin the most dangerous escort mission of World War II. 6 hours earlier, RAF Kimballton, England, 5:47 a.m. The briefing room smells like burnt coffee and cigarette smoke. Charlie Brown sits in the third row trying to stay awake. He's 21 years old, a farm kid from West Virginia who joined up after Pearl Harbor. This is his first mission as a command pilot. 27 other B-17s from the 379th Bomb Group will fly with him today. Target: the Focke-Wulf aircraft factory at Bremen, deep in northern Germany. Expect heavy flak over the target, the intelligence officer says, tapping the map with his pointer. And the Luftwaffe has been active all week. Fighter opposition will be significant. Brown's co-pilot, Second Lieutenant Spencer Pinky Luke, leans over. Significant. That's a nice way of saying they're going to try to kill us. Brown manages a thin smile. His crew is good. 10 men he's trained with for months. Andy Kuznetsov, the navigator, could find his way through a thunderstorm blindfolded. Sam Blackford, the bombardier, never misses. The gunners, Petchute, Ecke, Jennings, Doc Slenker, Al Sadok, are sharp, young, scared, but ready. Hugh Ecke Eckenrode is barely 19. The ball turret gunner, small enough to fit in that impossible sphere beneath the bomber where you hung in space, surrounded by plexiglass and 250 caliber machine guns, nothing between you and the ground but air and prayer. Their B-17F, serial number 423167, doesn't have a name yet. Some crews call it Ye Old Pub because of the cartoon on the nose, a broken down pub sign. But it's barely broken in, just a handful of missions old. Today will be its unlucky 13th sortie. At 6:30 a.m. they climb aboard. Brown settles into the left seat, runs through the pre-flight checklist. 4 Wright Cyclone engines, 1,200 horsepower each, 13 50 caliber machine guns, 6,000 pounds of bombs in the belly, fuel for 7 hours, oxygen for 6. Everything by the book. They take off at 7:15, circle Kimballton as the formation assembles, then turn east toward Germany. 28 bombers in tight formation, stacked in combat boxes, each protecting the others with overlapping fields of fire. Brown settles into the rhythm. Monitor the engines, hold formation, watch the sky. England falls behind. The North Sea glitters grey and hostile below. They cross the Dutch coast at 9:20 a.m. That's when it starts. The first flak bursts appear as black puffs in the clear winter air. Brown feels the concussions. Even at 27,000 feet, heavy German 80mm guns throwing steel and explosive into their flight path. He flies through the barrage, holding steady while shrapnel pings off the aluminum skin. A bomber to his left takes a direct hit. There one moment, a fireball the next. Pieces tumbling through space. 9 men gone in an instant. Then the fighters come. Focke-Wulf 190s and Messerschmitt 109s, diving out of the sun. The intercom explodes with shouts. Fighters 12 o'clock high. Break right! I got him. No, he's climbing. The sky fills with tracer rounds, bright lines of death crisscrossing the formation. Brown's gunners open up, the 50 cals hammering, spent shell casings rattling through the fuselage. A German fighter flashes past, so close Brown sees the pilot's face. Rounds punch through the B-17's left wing. Another fighter attacks from below, cannon shells walking up the fuselage. The number 3 engine coughs, trails smoke, dies. Brown feathers the propeller. They can fly on 3 engines. They keep going. The target appears at 11:30. Bremen's factories grey and industrial under thin clouds. Bomb bay doors open, Brown calls. The aircraft shudders as the doors retract, creating drag. They slow, vulnerable, holding straight and level for the bombing run. You don't dodge during the bomb run. You fly steady, give the bombardier his chance, and pray the flak doesn't find you. Blackford's voice crackles. Bombs away! 6,000 pounds drop free. The B-17 lurches upward, suddenly lighter. Bomb bay doors closed. Let's get the hell out of here. Brown banks left, following the formation toward home. That's when everything goes wrong. The fighter attack is coordinated, brutal, professional. A Focke-Wulf 190 comes in from dead ahead, head on, cannon blazing. It's a game of chicken at closing speed of 500 miles per hour. The German doesn't flinch. His 20mm rounds punch through the nose, through the cockpit, through everything. The plexiglass shatters. Wind screams in at 200 miles per hour. Temperature minus 40 degrees. Brown feels impacts. Metal striking metal. The airframe shuddering. Pinky slumps forward, unconscious, blood on his face. The number 2 engine explodes, fire blooming orange against the white wing. Brown hits the fire extinguisher, nothing. He shuts down the engine, feathers it. 2 engines gone now. The B-17 drops out of formation, losing altitude. More fighters swarm. They know a wounded bomber when they see one. Like wolves on an injured deer, they circle, taking turns. Cannon fire rips through the tail section. The intercom goes dead, except for static. Brown can't communicate with half his crew. He doesn't know if they're alive or dead. A burst of fire stitches across the fuselage. The right waist gunner, Sergeant Hugh Eckenrode, takes a round through the shoulder. He keeps firing, one-handed, screaming curses. The ball turret gunner manually cranks his turret, trying to track a fighter, but the hydraulics are shot. The number 4 engine starts losing oil pressure. Brown watches the gauge drop, knowing what comes next. The engine seizes with a grinding shudder. Feather it. 3 engines gone. They're flying on one. The altimeter unwinds. 25,000 feet. 20,000 toules. 15,000. The bomber is falling from the sky in slow motion, still somehow flying, held aloft by one straining engine and Brown's white-knuckled grip on the controls. The tail gunner doesn't respond on the intercom. Brown fears the worst. They're alone now, miles behind the formation, defenseless and dying. The fighters have moved on to other targets, satisfied this bomber is finished. It should be. By every law of physics and aerodynamics, they should already be scattered across the German countryside. But Brown keeps flying. There's nothing else to do. You fly until you can't, and then you fly a little more. West Virginia stubbornness, his father called it. The inability to quit even when quitting makes sense. At 10,000 feet, the oxygen system fails. They're low enough now that they don't need it, but it's one more system gone, one more piece of the aircraft bleeding out. The hydraulics are gone. Landing gear won't extend. Bomb bay doors are frozen half open. The turrets won't rotate. The intercom crackles with static and desperate voices. Doc Slenker, the medic, is working on casualties. How many? Brown doesn't know. He doesn't want to know yet. 5,000 feet. The German countryside spreads below, farm fields and villages, roads and rivers, beautiful and hostile. Brown aims northwest, toward the coast, toward the North Sea, toward England. It's 150 miles away. They're flying at 180 miles per hour on one engine. That's 50 minutes. If nothing else breaks, everything is breaking. Pilot to crew, Brown says into the intercom, not knowing who can hear him. Stay with me. We're going home. No one answers. Maybe the intercom is dead. Maybe there's no one left to answer. Brown flies on. At 2,000 feet, he spots other aircraft, German fighters circling an airfield below. They haven't seen him yet, or they're ignoring the crippled bomber as already dead. Brown drops lower, skimming the treetops, trying to be invisible. The single working engine screams, pushed beyond its limits. Temperature gauge climbing into the red. If it fails, they go down. There's no gliding a B-17 with no power. It falls like a brick. The coast is 30 miles ahead when a German fighter takes off from the airfield below, climbing to intercept. Brown sees it rising. A Messerschmitt 109, fast and lethal. This is it, he thinks. This is how it ends. They've come so far, survived so much, and now one German pilot with full ammunition and fuel will finish what the others started. The Messerschmitt closes fast, pulling up beneath them. Brown can't maneuver. He can barely hold altitude. His guns might be working, might be jammed, might be out of ammunition. He has no way to know. The crew is silent. Either they're dead, unconscious, or they've already accepted what's coming. Charlie Brown, 21 years old, West Virginia farm boy, first mission as command pilot, watches the German fighter rise toward him and thinks about his mother, about his girl back home, about all the things he'll never do. The Messerschmitt pulls alongside. and doesn't fire. Franz Josef Stigler was born on August 21st, 1915, in Regensburg, Bavaria, into a world that would be at war for most of his life. His father ran a small business. His mother raised 3 boys. Franz was the youngest, the quiet one, the dreamer who watched birds and wanted to fly. His older brother, August, was everything Franz admired: confident, strong, a natural leader. When August joined the Luftwaffe in the 1930s, Franz followed. Not because he believed in the politics, not because he hated anyone, but because his brother flew, and brothers stick together. And because the sky called to him the way it calls to certain men, a need deeper than reason. Franz learned to fly in gliders first, soaring silently over the Bavarian countryside, reading the wind, feeling the aircraft become an extension of himself. Then came powered flight, aerobatics, formation flying. He was good, better than good. He had the instinct for it, the 3-dimensional awareness, the ability to think in vectors and angles while pulling 6 Gs in a turn, the calm under pressure that separates the survivors from the statistics. But August taught him something more important than flying. The Stigler brothers had an instructor in the Luftwaffe, Gustav Rödel, a veteran of the Great War, a man who'd survived when most of his generation died in flames. Rödel taught tactics, but more importantly, he taught honor. You are fighter pilots, first, last, always, Rödel told his students. Not killers, not murderers, fighter pilots. He made them memorize it. You engage armed enemies in fair combat. You never shoot at a man in a parachute. He's already out of the fight, defenseless. You never strafe rescue crews or ambulances. You fight with honor, or you don't fight at all. Now, August took those lessons seriously. So did Franz. In 1939, when the war began, the Stigler brothers flew together. They protected each other. They came home together. Until the day August didn't come home. Shot down over England in 1940 during the Battle of Britain, his Messerschmitt 109 spinning into the Channel. No parachute, no survivors. Franz was 25 when he lost his brother. The grief was physical, a wound that never fully healed. But it also clarified things. Franz would fly. He would fight. He would be the best pilot he could be, because that's what August would have wanted. But he would do it with honor. He would remember Rödel's lessons. He would be a fighter pilot, not a murderer. By December 1943, Franz Stigler is 28 years old and has 27 confirmed kills. He's an ace several times over, a holder of the German Cross in gold, 1 kill away from the Knight's Cross, the Ritterkreuz, Germany's highest military honor. His Messerschmitt Bf 109 G6, painted in Luftwaffe grey-green camouflage, is his 3rd aircraft. The first 2 were shot out from under him. He's been wounded twice, crash-landed 3 times, and buried more friends than he cares to count. He flies with the Jagdgeschwader 27, a fighter wing that's been bleeding experienced pilots for months. The new guys last 2 weeks, maybe 3. The veterans are exhausted, flying 3 sorties a day, outnumbered by American bombers that keep coming in formations so large they blacken the sky. For every bomber the Luftwaffe shoots down, 2 more appear. The math is simple and brutal. Germany is losing. But you don't think about the math when you're strapped into a fighter cockpit. You think about your wingman, your squadron, the bomber in your gun sight. You fly the mission, you come home. You do it again tomorrow. December 20th, 1943. Stigler has already flown 2 missions today. The first at dawn, intercepting American bombers over northern Germany. His squadron diving into the formation, firing, breaking away before the escort fighters could catch them. 1 bomber damaged, maybe downed, no time to confirm. The second mission, at mid-morning, more bombers, more escorts, his element leader shot down, the kid who'd been in the squadron for 3 days. Stigler landed with bullet holes in his wing and hydraulic fluid leaking. The ground crew patched it, rearmed and refueled the aircraft. 30 minutes on the ground. Then the air raid sirens wailed again. More bombers, always more bombers. Stigler is tired. Not the kind of tired you fix with sleep. The kind that lives in your bones, in the back of your eyes, in the part of your brain that calculates angles and deflection while your hands fly the aircraft on instinct. He's been doing this for 3 years. He's seen too much. Friends burning, kids dying on their first mission, parachutes that don't open, aircraft that explode, that spin, that simply vanish in a cloud of debris. The mathematics of survival say he should already be dead, but he keeps flying. At 12:30 p.m, Stigler is on the ground at Jever Airfield in northern Germany, near the coast, when he hears aircraft overhead. The base's flak guns open up, dull crumps of detonation, black puffs in the sky. American bombers heading home after hitting Bremen. The raid is over, the main formation's already gone. But stragglers sometimes limp past. Damaged aircraft trying to make it to England. Stigler doesn't wait for orders. He runs to his Messerschmitt, ground crews still working on it, and tells them to get the engine started. They protest. The aircraft needs more work. He needs rest. Let someone else. But he's already climbing into the cockpit. The Daimler-Benz engine coughs, catches, roars. He doesn't bother with full pre-flight checks. Just fuel, ammunition, engine instruments. Good enough. He takes off alone, climbing west, scanning the sky. He's hunting for the 28th kill, the Knight's Cross, the medal that means something, that August would have been proud of. One more bomber, just one. The sky is clear, crystalline winter air, visibility forever. At 5,000 feet, Stigler spots it. A B-17 flying alone, low and slow, heading northwest toward the coast. No escorts, no formation protection. Just one crippled bomber, trailing smoke, limping home. Perfect. Stigler banks toward it, checks his weapons, 20mm cannon loaded, 13mm machine guns ready. He comes in from the bombers 6 o'clock, low and behind, using the sun if there was one. Standard attack profile. Close to 200 meters, center the gun sight on the wing route. Where the fuel tanks are, fire a 3-second burst. Watch it burn. He's done this 27 times. He knows exactly how it works, but as he closes, he sees the damage. The tail is shredded, the entire rear gun position gone. The bomber is flying impossibly low, just above the trees, slow enough that he has to throttle back to avoid overshooting. This isn't a combat aircraft anymore. This is wreckage that somehow still flies. Stigler pulls underneath the bomber, coming up on its right side. He needs to see it up close, confirm the kill, make sure it's not a trick. Sometimes American crews would feign damage to lure a fighter in close. Then the gunners would light you up. He's seen that before. But there's no trick here, just devastation. He pulls alongside, 50 meters away, and looks directly into the aircraft. The fuselage is torn open like someone used a can opener. He can see crew members inside, slumped, bleeding, moving weakly. The waist gunner's position is empty, or maybe the gunner is on the floor, dead or dying. The ball turret hangs crooked, damaged. No guns track him. Nothing moves to engage. In the cockpit, visible through shattered plexiglass, the pilot is hunched over the controls. His face is pale, streaked with blood. He's flying on pure will. Stigler eases closer, 20 meters. Close enough to see details: the pilot's leather jacket, his oxygen mask dangling loose, the way his hands grip the yoke. Close enough to see that half the crew is probably dead or wounded. Close enough to see that this isn't an enemy bomber. It's a flying morgue full of boys trying not to die. His finger rests on the trigger. 1 pull, 2 seconds, glory. But Rodol's voice echoes. You are fighter pilots first, last, always. And August's voice, somehow, after all these years. Don't become something you'll hate, Franz. Stigler looks at the American pilot. The American pilot looks back. For a long moment, neither moves. Two professionals, two men who understand what it means to fly, to fight, to survive. The American isn't begging. He's just waiting, accepting. There's a dignity in that. Franz Stigler thinks about his brother, about honor, about what kind of man shoots helpless, wounded enemies. He thinks about going home tonight and sleeping, and whether he could sleep after pulling that trigger. He thinks about the Knight's Cross, about glory, about all the things that seemed important this morning, and he decides, not today, not like this. He takes his finger off the trigger, closes formation on the bomber's wing, and prepares to do something that might get him executed. He's going to save them. The approach takes 40 seconds that feel like 40 minutes. Stigler throttles back until his Messerschmitt is barely flying, hanging in the air at 180 kilometers per hour, dangerously slow for a fighter designed to move fast and strike hard. The Bf-109 shudders on the edge of a stall, wings wobbling, engine labouring. He's too low, too slow, too exposed. If another German fighter appears, or if ground observers report him, he's a dead man. You don't fly formation with an enemy bomber, ever. But he keeps his position steady, 20 meters off the B-17's starboard wing, matching its painfully slow descent. The bomber is losing altitude gradually, 50 feet per minute, maybe less. It can't climb. It can barely maintain level flight. The single remaining engine on the outboard right position howls at maximum power, pushed past every red line, the only thing keeping 10 men and several tons of aluminum in the sky. Stigler studies the damage with a professional's eye. The left horizontal stabilizer is mostly gone, shredded by cannon fire. The The right stabilizer has fist-sized holes. The vertical fin is intact, but the rudder barely moves. The control cables must be severed or jammed. The fuselage looks like someone took a sledgehammer to it. Metal panels peeled back, stringers exposed, whole sections simply missing. He counts 9 major impact areas, any one of which should have brought the aircraft down. How it's still flying is a mystery that defies engineering. The pilot up front must be wrestling the controls constantly, compensating for asymmetric thrust, damaged control surfaces, and an airframe that wants to roll left and drop. It's not flying so much as controlled falling. The tail gunner's position is obliterated. Stigler can see straight through the bomber where the rear turret should be. Just twisted metal and empty space. If there was a man back there, he's gone. The waist gun positions on both sides hang silent. Are the gunners dead, wounded, out of ammunition? He watches for movement and sees one figure slumped against the inside of the fuselage, another crawling slowly toward him. The ball turret underneath rotates a few degrees, stops, rotates back. Someone's alive down there, trying to fight, even though the turret's probably jammed. Stigler respects that, the courage to keep trying when everything's already lost. He eases even closer, 15 meters. He can see individual rivets on the bomber's skin, the stenciled serial numbers, the fresh aluminum patches where earlier damage was repaired. This aircraft has been through hell before today. Now it's going through hell's final circle. In the cockpit, the pilot's head turns. Their eyes meet. Stigler has shot down 27 aircraft. He's seen hundreds of enemy crews, glimpsed faces in the instant before firing, watched men bail out, watched men burn. But he's never done this. Never flown formation close enough to see an enemy pilot's expression, to read the exhaustion and pain and desperate determination in another man's eyes. The American is young, mid-20s at most, blood on his face from a head wound, one eye swollen, jaw clenched. He's not panicking, not giving up, just flying, moment by moment, meter by meter, toward a coast that might as well be on another planet. His co-pilot beside him is slumped forward, unconscious or worse. For several seconds they fly like that, enemy and enemy, 10 meters apart, eyes locked. Stigler sees something in that young pilot's face that he recognizes, the look of a man who's already made peace with death but refuses to stop fighting. He's seen that look in mirrors after bad missions. He's seen it in August's face, in photographs taken weeks before his brother died. The American pilot isn't afraid of Stigler anymore. What's the point? If the German wanted to shoot, he'd have shot. There's nothing the American can do to stop him. No guns that work, no speed to evade, no altitude to maneuver. Just acceptance. Whatever happens next is out of his hands. But Stigler sees something else too. The American is still flying, still making decisions, still fighting for his crew. That matters. It matters a great deal. Stigler raises his hand slowly, deliberately, where the American can see it. He points forward. Then he points to himself. Then forward again, toward the northwest, toward the coast. The gesture is clear. I'm going to escort you. The American pilot's eyes widen. His mouth moves. Stigler can't hear the words through 2 layers of plexiglass and 80 meters of screaming air. But he reads the shape. What? Stigler repeats the gesture. Points ahead. Points to himself. Points ahead. Then he gives a thumbs up, a universal gesture among pilots. We're going home. I'm taking you there. The American stares at him like he's hallucinating. Maybe he is. Maybe blood loss and oxygen deprivation have finally caught up, and this whole impossible situation is a dying dream. But the German fighter is still there, still matching his speed, still flying rock-steady formation. Not shooting, not peeling away, staying. Inside the B-17's cockpit, Charlie Brown can't process this. His training, his briefings, his entire understanding of this war says that German fighters kill American bombers, period. That's what they do. That's their job. He's been in combat for 6 hours today, and every single German aircraft he's seen has been trying to murder him. Now one is escorting him, protecting him. It doesn't make sense, but sense stopped existing around the time the third engine failed. Brown nods slowly. He doesn't know what else to do. He's committed. Now, flying straight, flying level, trusting this enemy pilot for reasons he can't explain. Maybe because he has no choice. Maybe because something in the German's eyes said, this isn't a trick. Stigler settles into formation, close enough that the bomber crew can see his face clearly. He wants them to see him. He wants them to understand, I'm not hiding. I'm not ambushing. I'm here openly, flying with you. If I wanted you dead, you'd already be dead. He checks his fuel gauge. 8 minutes to the coast at this speed. Maybe 10. His fuel is marginal, he took off without full tanks, and the Bf-109 burns fuel like water at low altitude. He might not make it back to Jeva, he might have to put down somewhere else, or worse, go into the North Sea. But the math is simple. These men need 8 minutes to reach safety. He has 8 minutes of fuel, so he'll give them 8 minutes. The countryside slides beneath them, farm fields brown and frozen, villages clustered around church steeples, roads empty of traffic. It's a Monday afternoon in December, cold and clear. Somewhere down there, Germans are living normal lives, eating lunch, working, not knowing that 3,000 feet above them, two enemies are flying together in the most unlikely partnership of the war. Stigler scans constantly, sky above for fighters, ground below for flak positions. This is the dangerous part. German anti-aircraft gunners shoot anything that looks like an enemy bomber. They won't see his Messerschmitt until it's too late. If the flak crews open fire, they'll hit the bomber and possibly him too. 2 minutes pass, 3. The bomber staggers through the air, each second an achievement. Stigler flies steady, professional, his fighter rock solid on the B-17's wing. He's committed now. Whatever happens, happens. At 4 minutes, he sees the coast ahead. A grey line where land meets sea, white breakers rolling in against winter beaches. The North Sea stretches beyond, cold and immense. England is somewhere out there, 90 miles across the water. The bomber has to make it that far. Stigler can't follow. His fuel won't allow it, and even if it did, flying into Allied airspace would be suicide. Every RAF fighter and coastal defence gun in England would light him up. But getting them to the coast is enough. Once they're over water, out of German-controlled airspace, they have a chance. The RAF runs air-sea rescue. If they ditch, they might be picked up. If they can keep flying, they might make England. Either way, they're out of his hands. 5 minutes, 6. The coast grows closer. Stigler can see the white line of surf, the winter grey sand, the coastal defences. Flak emplacements dot the shoreline. Concrete bunkers bristling with guns. The gunners will see them coming. One crippled bomber, obviously American, flying straight and level. Easy target. They'll open fire at 2,000 meters. Standard procedure, unless. Stigler eases ahead of the bomber, putting his Messerschmitt between the B-17 and the coast. Then he rocks his wings. The international signal for friendly aircraft, don't shoot. He does it again, more dramatically, banking left and right, making his silhouette obvious. German fighter, Luftwaffe markings. Don't shoot your own guy. And don't shoot the bomber I'm escorting. It's insane. It's treason. If anyone on the ground figures out what he's doing, he's dead. But he's come this far. Might as well finish it. The coast passes beneath them. The gunners don't fire. Maybe they're confused. Maybe they think it's an escort bringing a captured bomber to a German airfield. Maybe they just don't want to risk hitting a Luftwaffe fighter. Whatever the reason, they hold fire. The North Sea opens ahead, grey and hostile and infinite. The bomber crosses the coastline, now over water, now technically out of German airspace. Stigler flies with it for another 30 seconds, making sure they're clear, making sure no coastal fighters launch to finish the job. Then he knows, this is it. This is where it ends. He pulls ahead of the bomber one last time, close enough that both pilots can see each other clearly. Brown is staring at him with an expression somewhere between disbelief and gratitude. Stigler catches his eye, raises his hand to his forehead in a crisp salute. One pilot to another, one warrior to another. Respect, honour, safe journey. Then he banks hard right, drops his nose and dives for the deck, racing back toward Germany at full throttle before someone realises what just happened. Charlie Brown watches the Messerschmitt disappear, a grey dot against the grey sea, then gone. His hands are shaking on the controls, his head wound throbs. Half his crew might be dead. His bomber is a flying wreck held together by prayer and stubbornness. But they're alive, they're over water, they're going home. Because a German fighter pilot decided not to kill them. Brown will spend the rest of his life trying to understand why. The moment before, the choice is the worst part. Inside the B-17's cockpit, Second Lieutenant Charlie Brown sees the Messerschmitt pull alongside and his world contracts to a single thought. This is how I die. His training is clear. When a German fighter pulls into formation like this, it means they're checking you're done before they finish you. They'll fly close, verify you're crippled, look for weapons that still work, make sure you're not playing dead. Then they'll drop back, line up their guns, and put a 20mm cannon burst through your cockpit or fuel tanks. Clinical, professional. The Luftwaffe's good at this. Brown can't do anything about it. His remaining engine is at maximum power just to hold altitude. He can't climb, can't dive, can't turn without stalling and spinning in. The gunners who are still conscious might as well be unarmed. The guns are jammed, frozen, out of ammunition, or pointed in useless directions. The ball turret below rotates weakly, but even if it could fire, shooting at point-blank range would probably take out the B-17's own wing. So he flies straight, flies level, watches the German fighter pace him like a shark beside a wounded seal. Through the shattered plexiglass, through the howling wind that makes his face numb, Brown can see the German pilot clearly. The man is maybe 30, maybe younger. Hard to tell through the leather helmet and oxygen mask. But his eyes are visible, and his eyes are looking right at Brown, not at the aircraft, at Brown specifically, pilot to pilot. The German's Messerschmitt is close enough that Brown can read the aircraft number on its fuselage, can see the propeller blur, can observe the way the pilot makes constant tiny control adjustments to maintain formation. The man is good, excellent actually. This kind of slow speed formation flying, matching an aircraft that's barely controllable, takes skill and experience. This isn't some rookie. This is an ace, which makes what happens next even more impossible to explain. The German pilot doesn't shoot. He just looks. Brown has been in combat long enough to recognize the rhythm of an attack, the setup, the positioning, the moment of commitment when the enemy commits to the kill. He's seen it from both sides, his own gunners lining up targets, German fighters making their runs. There's a geometry to it, a physics. The German should be dropping back right now, getting separation, setting up his firing solution. Instead, he comes closer. Franz Stigler knows exactly what he's looking at. 27 confirmed kills teach you to read an aircraft like a doctor reads symptoms. This B-17 has minutes left, maybe less. The asymmetric thrust from the single working engine is pulling it into a slow left turn that the pilot fights constantly. The control surfaces are damaged. He can see the elevators flexing wrong, the rudder barely moving. The structural integrity is compromised. The aircraft is flying on borrowed physics, held together by aluminum skin and crew determination. More importantly, the crew is destroyed. Through the massive holes in the fuselage, Stigler can see men slumped, bleeding, barely moving. One gunner in the waist section has his arm wrapped in bandages, soaked red. Another is unconscious or dead, lying on the floor. The tail gunner's position doesn't exist anymore, just torn metal and empty space where a man used to be. This isn't a bomber anymore. It's a casualty evacuation in progress, a flying ambulance barely keeping its patients alive long enough to reach help. Stigler knows the regulations. He knows his duty. He knows what command expects. Destroy enemy aircraft. Prevent them from returning to bomb Germany again. Show no mercy, because the enemy shows none. He knows that every bomber that survives today will come back tomorrow with more bombs. He knows that German cities are burning. German civilians are dying. And that somewhere in the mathematics of total war, letting this bomber escape might cost German lives. He also knows what Gustav Rodel taught him. You are fighter pilots first, last, always. Not executioners, fighter pilots. In this frozen moment, 20 meters apart, both pilots understand something profound. They're not nations, not ideologies, not flags or causes. They're just men who happen to fly, who happen to be on opposite sides of a war neither of them started. Brown sees it in the Germans' eyes. Not hatred, not bloodlust, just recognition. The look of someone who understands what it costs to keep flying when everything says to quit. The look of someone who's been where Brown is now. Shot up, bleeding, scared, flying on pure stubbornness. Because that's what you do. You fly. Stigler sees it in Brown's face. The determination of a man who won't abandon his crew, who will fly this wreck until it falls apart, or until he gets them home, whichever comes first. There's no quit in those eyes, just endurance, just duty, just the silent promise every pilot makes to the men who trust him, I'll get you back. And in that moment, Stigler decides. The decision isn't rational. It doesn't serve Germany's strategic interests. It doesn't advance the war effort. It doesn't contribute to victory or safety, or any of the reasons men are supposed to fight. The decision is purely, simply human. He cannot shoot these men. He will not shoot these men. The Knight's Cross can go to hell. Glory is meaningless. Honor isn't about medals or kill counts. Honor is about remaining decent when everything invites you to become a monster. Honor is about making the choice that lets you live with yourself tomorrow. Stigler takes his finger off the trigger, switches his weapons to safe, and makes a different choice. Not the one he's ordered to make, not the one that makes strategic sense, the one his conscience demands. He's going to save them. But first, he has to make sure they understand. Brown is staring at him with the blank incomprehension of a man expecting death and receiving something else. Stigler needs to communicate across language barriers, across aircraft aluminum, across the screaming void between them. He raises his left hand slowly, deliberately, points ahead, toward the northwest, toward the coast, toward safety, then points to himself, then ahead again. The message is clear to any pilot. I'm going with you. I'm escorting you out. Brown's expression shifts from acceptance to confusion to something like hope. His mouth moves. Words Stigler can't hear but can guess. Why? Or what? Or maybe just no. Stigler repeats the gesture. Ahead. Me. Ahead. Then he gives a thumbs up, a gesture universal among pilots since the First World War. We're good. We're going. Trust me. He doesn't wait for acknowledgement. He settles into formation, rock steady on the bomber's right wing, and commits fully to this insane decision. No half measures, no looking back. He's chosen his path, and now he'll walk it to the end. Inside the B-17, Brown's co-pilot, Pinky Luke, stirs, groaning, lifting his head from where it rested against the control panel. Blood crusts his face from a scalp wound. His eyes are unfocused, struggling to make sense of what they're seeing. "Charlie," he croaks, "there's a German fighter." "I know. He's right there." "I know. Why isn't he shooting?" Brown doesn't have an answer. He just flies. The German flies with him. Together, two enemies, they turn northwest toward the coast. Behind them in the fuselage, the crew who are still conscious are processing their own impossible reality. Staff Sergeant Blackie, the engineer, stares through a hole in the skin at the Messerschmitt 20 meters away. He can see the German pilot's face. He can see the swastika on the tail. His hands are still on a .50 caliber machine gun that might or might not work, and he has no idea if he should be trying to shoot or just watching this impossible thing unfold. "Doc," Blackie calls to the medic working on wounded crew. "We got a German fighter flying with us. Morphine's making you hallucinate," Doc Slenker says, without looking up from bandaging a wound. "And no, really, look." Doc glances out, sees the Messerschmitt and freezes. "Jesus Christ, he's not shooting." "Yeah, I noticed. Should we shoot at him?" "With what? Everything's jammed or empty." They watch the German fighter pace them, steady as a training flight, and, in the surreal calm of this moment, Blackie starts to laugh. Not hysteria, just the absurd recognition that in a war full of impossible things, this might be the most impossible, an enemy saving them. For Franz Stigler, the choice is made. The consequences can come later. Right now, he has one mission: get these men to safety. Everything else, his career, his reputation, his own survival, is secondary. He scans the sky constantly, watching for other German fighters. If a patrol spots them, they'll both be dead in seconds. He watches the ground for flak positions. He monitors his fuel gauge, watching it drop, knowing he's pushing his luck. He flies with the precision of a man who understands that one mistake now means 10 men die. And in the cockpit of the shattered B-17, Charlie Brown flies with the steady focus of a man who's been given a gift he doesn't understand but accepts anyway. His hands hurt from gripping the controls. His head wound throbs with every heartbeat. His single engine screams in protest. But he flies. 2 enemies, 1 mission, 8 minutes to the coast. Honor isn't about choosing your side. It's about choosing your humanity. Stigler chose. And in choosing, he saved not just 10 American lives, but something more fragile and precious. Proof that even in war's darkest hour, decency can survive. The coast is 7 kilometers ahead. Franz Stigler can see it as a grey line on the horizon, land meeting sea, the boundary between German-controlled airspace and the North Sea's no man's land. 7 kilometers at 180 kilometers per hour. 2.5 minutes. That's how long he has to keep this impossible formation intact, keep both aircraft alive, and get these American boys to safety before someone realizes what he's doing. Every second stretches into eternity. Stigler flies with mechanical precision, his Messerschmitt locked onto the B-17's starboard wing, as if connected by invisible wires. 20 meters of separation, close enough to signal, close enough to be seen, close enough that any gunner on the ground who sees them will see both aircraft together. That's the plan, such as it is. Stay so close that German defences assume this is an escort bringing a captured bomber to a friendly airfield, not an act of treason in progress. His eyes move constantly. Sky above, clear, no contrails, no glints of sun on metal. Sky behind, empty, thank God, no pursuit. Sky ahead, nothing yet. Ground below, farmland, giving way to coastal towns, defensive positions, the bunkers, and gun emplacements that guard every metre of German-held coastline. Those guns are the problem. The Kriegsmarine and Wehrmacht have spent 3 years turning the European coast into a fortress. Every beach, every port, Every strategic position has anti-aircraft batteries, 88mm guns primarily, the famous 8-8 that's deadly against tanks and devastating against aircraft. The gunners are good, experienced, and they have standing orders: shoot anything Allied. A crippled B-17 limping past at low altitude is a gift, an easy kill target practice. Stigler has to make them not shoot. At 5,000 meters from the coast, he sees the first defensive position. Concrete bunker, 2 guns, crew scrambling as they track the approaching aircraft. Stigler does something that would get him court-martialed if his superiors saw it. He rocks his wings, hard. Left bank, right bank, left again. The internationally recognized signal for friendly aircraft, don't shoot. The bunker's guns track them, but don't fire. Confused, probably. Why is a Luftwaffe fighter signaling friendly while escorting an American bomber? But confusion means hesitation, and hesitation means seconds, and seconds mean the bomber gets closer to safety. Inside the B-17, Charlie Brown sees the German fighter banking dramatically, showing its full wingspan, making itself obvious. He understands immediately what's happening. The German is trying to protect them, not just from other fighters, but from German guns on the ground. The audacity of it is staggering. This man isn't just sparing them, he's actively saving them at risk of his own life. "Pinky," Brown says to his co-pilot, who's more alert now, eyes focusing. "You seeing this?" Pinky Luke stares at the Messerschmitt performing its visual signal. This is actually happening. This isn't blood loss hallucination. No, it's real. A German fighter is protecting us from German guns. Yeah. What the hell do? We keep flying. And we remember. 4 kilometers to coast. Another defensive position appears. This one larger. 4. Guns probably protecting a port or military installation. Stigler repeats his signal, rocking wings, making his Luftwaffe markings obvious. The guns track but hold fire. He can imagine the gunners arguing, "That's one of ours," but he's with an American bomber. Maybe it's a capture, bringing it to base. Then why aren't they following proper procedure? I don't know, but I'm not shooting at a 109. 3 kilometers. The bomber staggers through the air like a drunk trying to walk a straight line. The single working engine, number 4, the outboard right, is past every temperature limit, metal screaming at RPMs it was never designed to sustain. Brown fights the controls constantly. Right rudder to counter the asymmetric thrust, left aileron to prevent a roll, elevator adjustments to hold altitude. It's like wrestling a dying animal that wants desperately to fall, but he won't let it. Behind him in the fuselage, the crew is doing what they can. Doc Slenker has given morphine to the worst wounded, trying to keep them stable, knowing that every minute they stay airborne is another minute these men stay alive. The tail gunner, Staff Sergeant Alex Yelesanko, is almost certainly dead. They haven't heard from him on intercom, and the entire tail section is destroyed, but they don't know for certain, can't check, have to assume he's gone and focus on the living. Hugh Ecke Eckenrode, the ball turret gunner, has manually cranked his turret back to centre and climbed out into the fuselage, wounded, cold, but alive. He stares through the hole in the aircraft's side at the German fighter pacing them. "That guy could have killed us 10 times over," he says to no one in particular. "But he didn't," Blackie responds. "Why?" "Don't know, don't care. Just be grateful." 2 kilometers to coast. Stigler checks his fuel gauge and his stomach drops. 5 minutes remaining, maybe less. He burned more fuel than he thought staying at low altitude, fighting the Messerschmitt's natural instinct to go fast, keeping it slow and steady. 5 minutes to reach the coast, see them safe, and get back over land before his engine quits. The math is tight, too tight, but he committed to this. He'll see it through. 1 kilometer. The coastline is clear now. Sandy beaches, coastal villages, defensive works, and beyond it the North Sea stretching grey and cold to the horizon. England is 90 miles that way, across open water. If the B-17 can make it that far, they'll be in Allied hands. If they ditch in the sea, the RAF runs air-sea rescue. They have a chance, but first, they have to cross the coast without being shot down by their own side, or his side. At 500 meters from the coast, Stigler makes his final protective gesture. He positions his Messerschmitt directly between the B-17 and the densest concentration of coastal defences, a major gun battery protecting what looks like a radar installation. He flies deliberately, obviously, his aircraft's profile unmistakable. The message to the gunners below is clear. "You want to shoot that bomber? You'll have to shoot through me. It's the ultimate gamble. If they fire, he's dead. If they recognise what he's doing, aiding an enemy aircraft, he's as good as dead anyway. But in this moment, he's betting that the gunners' confusion and their training against fratricide will create enough hesitation for the bomber to slip past. The guns track them. Stigler can see the barrels moving, following their flight path. His finger hovers near the throttle, ready to brake hard if they fire, knowing it won't matter, knowing that at this altitude and speed he has no chance to evade. But the guns don't fire. And then they're over the beach, over the breaking waves, over the territorial limit, and suddenly they're over the North Sea. German airspace is behind them, open water ahead. The bomber is free. Stigler stays with them for another 15 seconds, making sure they're clear, making sure no coastal fighters launch in pursuit. The B-17 flies straight and level, barely 100 feet above the grey water, heading northwest toward England. Brown keeps it steady, keeps the single engine running, keeps his crew alive moment by moment. Finally, Stigler knows this is where it ends. This is as far as he can go. His fuel gauge shows 4 minutes remaining, enough to make the coast if he turns now, if he's lucky, if the engine doesn't quit, not enough to follow them further. He pulls ahead of the bomber one last time, climbing slightly so Brown can see him clearly. The two aircraft fly parallel for a few seconds, close enough that both pilots can make eye contact one final time. Brown's face is exhausted, blood-streaked, but there's something else there now. Gratitude, recognition, the silent acknowledgement of a debt that can never be repaid. Stigler raises his hand to his forehead, a crisp salute, military precision, the gesture of respect from one warrior to another. Not German to American, not enemy to enemy, pilot to pilot. Two men who shared the sky, who survived together, who made choices that defined them. Brown returns the salute, his hand shaking, but his gesture clear. Then Franz Stigler banks hard right, drops his nose and dives for the deck, racing back toward Germany at full throttle. He pushes the Daimler-Benz engine to maximum power, trading altitude for speed, watching his fuel gauge tick down to nothing. The coastline appears ahead. He crosses it at 50 feet, pulls up over the dunes, levels out over farmland. His fuel warning light flickers, then glows steady. Almost empty. Jever Airfield is 10 kilometers away. He'll make it. Barely. The Messerschmitt will run on fumes, but he'll make it. He lands 6 minutes later, the engine coughing on the final approach, and rolls to a stop near the dispersal area. Ground crew runs to meet him. "Everything okay, Herr Oberleutnant?" "Fine," Stigler says, climbing out on shaking legs. "Just a patrol. Nothing to report." Nothing to report. That's the official story. That's the story that keeps him alive. The ground crew refuels the aircraft, patches the bullet holes from earlier missions, and prepares it for the next sortie. Stigler walks to the ready room, pours coffee with hands that won't stop trembling, and tries to process what he just did. He let a bomber escape. More than that, he saved it, he protected it, he committed treason, violated orders, risked his life and career, all for 10 enemy airmen he'll never see again. And he'd do it again. Because some things matter more than orders. Some things matter more than victory. Some things matter more than war. Like honor, like humanity, like the ability to look in the mirror tomorrow and recognize the man looking back. Out over the North Sea, Charlie Brown flies on. The coast of England is an hour away. An hour of holding this dying aircraft together, of keeping the engine running, of not thinking about the fuel gauge, of praying to a God he's not sure he believes in. An hour of impossible flying. But he's alive. His crew is alive. Because a German fighter pilot made a choice. Brown will spend the rest of his life trying to find that pilot, trying to understand why, trying to say thank you. But Franz Stigler already knows Brown would understand. Because pilots know. They understand what it means to make a choice in the sky, to commit to a course of action, to do the thing that honor demands, even when it defies logic. The escort is over. The war continues. But for two men on opposite sides of a conflict, something changed today. Something that proved war doesn't have to destroy everything decent in us. Something that proved, even in the darkest hour, mercy is possible, if we choose it. Charlie Brown lands at Seething, England at 2:47 p.m., 1 hour and 18 minutes after Franz Stigler turned back toward Germany. The landing is barely controlled chaos. No hydraulics means no brakes, no flaps, no normal landing gear extension. Brown cranks the gear down manually, approaches hot because he can't slow down, and slams onto the runway with a screech of tortured metal. The B-17 rolls for what feels like forever before friction finally brings it to a stop. Ground crew runs toward the aircraft and stops dead when they see it. One mechanic will later say it looked like the bomber had flown through a sawmill. Another says it was the worst damage he'd seen on an aircraft that was still airborne. The crew chief takes one look and declares it unflyable. beyond repair, suitable only for scrap and salvage. Medical personnel swarm aboard. They extract the wounded first, the co-pilot with his head injury, the waist gunner with his shoulder wound, others with shrapnel injuries and frostbite. Then they reach the tail section and find Staff Sergeant Alex Yelesanko, dead, killed instantly hours ago when German cannon fire obliterated his position. They pull his body out gently, respectfully, and carry him away on a stretcher covered with a blanket. 9 men survived. 1 didn't. Brown will carry that mathematics for the rest of his life. Intelligence officers arrive while the crew is still being helped from the aircraft. They want the debriefing now, immediately, while memories are fresh. Brown, still bleeding from his head wound, sits in a room that smells like stale cigarettes and tells them everything. The mission, the attack, the damage, the impossible flight home, and the German fighter pilot who escorted them to safety. The intelligence officer, a major whose name Brown doesn't catch, stops writing. Say that again? A German fighter pilot, Messerschmitt 109. He pulled alongside us over Bremen, flew formation with us, escorted us past German coastal defences and saw us safely to the North Sea. Then he saluted and flew away. Silence in the room. The major exchanges glances with his aide, a captain. The captain's expression says clearly, head wound, blood loss, shock. Lieutenant Brown, the major says carefully, you took significant damage. You were wounded. You were flying at low altitude without oxygen. It's possible you experienced some confusion. I wasn't confused. My co-pilot saw it. My whole crew saw it. We had a German fighter escorting us for 10 minutes. And this German pilot just decided to spare you? To protect you? Yes, sir. Why would he do that? I don't know, sir. But he did. The major puts down his pen. Lieutenant, I'm going to tell you something, and you're going to listen carefully. What you're describing, if it happened, is an anomaly, an aberration. It does not represent German fighter tactics, German military doctrine, or the reality of this war. More importantly, it's not a story we can afford to have circulating among the crews. Sir, I'm not making this up. I didn't say you were. The major's voice is firm but not unkind. I'm saying that whether it happened or not, we can't acknowledge it. Think about what you're asking me to write in a report. That a German ace, a man who kills American airmen for a living, suddenly developed a conscience and saved you. What does that do to morale? What does that do to the bomber crews who need to believe the Germans are the enemy? Pure and simple. But it's the truth. The truth is complicated. The war is simple. We need it to stay simple. The captain leans forward. If this story gets out, Lieutenant, it could be used for propaganda. The Germans could claim it shows their pilots are humane, that they're not the monsters we make them out to be. It could undermine everything we're trying to accomplish. Do you understand? Brown understands. He doesn't like it, but he understands. In the mathematics of total war, there's no room for complicated truths, no room for mercy that doesn't fit the narrative, no room for German pilots who do the right thing. What goes in the report? Brown asks. That you were attacked by German fighters, sustained heavy damage, and made it back through. Exceptional piloting skill and crew courage. Nothing about an escort, nothing about a German pilot helping you. Officially, that didn't happen. And unofficially? The major looks at him for a long moment. Unofficially, Lieutenant, if I were you, I'd keep that story to yourself, for your own good. It's not a suggestion. It's an order, delivered with the kind of friendly firmness that makes clear what happens to junior officers who don't follow friendly suggestions from majors. Brown signs the debriefing report. It's accurate about everything except the most important part. The part about the German pilot who saved his life. That part vanishes into the classified silence of things that are true but inconvenient. He leaves the debriefing room and finds his crew in the medical ward. They're being patched up, checked for injuries, given hot coffee and warmer blankets. Pinky Luke has a bandage wrapped around his head, already making jokes to hide the fear. The gunners are quiet, processing what they survived. Doc Slenker sits alone, staring at nothing, the 1,000-yard stare of a man who's seen too much. You tell them about the German? Pinky asks quietly. Yeah, what did they say? They said to forget about it, said it didn't happen. But it did happen. I know, you know, we all know. But officially, it didn't happen. The crew absorbs this in silence. They understand military logic, even if they don't like it. Sometimes the truth is classified. Sometimes what you saw isn't what you're allowed to say you saw. So what do we do? One of the gunners asks. We remember, Brown says. We remember, and someday, when this war is over, maybe we can tell the story properly. But for now, we keep it to ourselves. They nod. They agree. They understand. But Charlie Brown knows he'll never forget the image of that German pilot's face through the cockpit glass, the salute, the impossible mercy. It's burned into his memory like a brand. He doesn't know the pilot's name, doesn't know if he survived the war, doesn't know if he'll ever see him again. But he knows what happened, and no amount of official silence can erase it. 800 miles away, Franz Stigler sits in the Yevva airfield ready room and says nothing. His squadron mates ask about the patrol. See anything? Shoot anything? He shakes his head. Nothing to report, just flew a sector, saw nothing interesting, came back. Standard patrol. No one questions it. Pilots fly dozens of missions that result in nothing. Not every sortie ends with combat. Sometimes you go up, patrol your area and return. That's the routine. But Stigler's hands shake when he pours coffee. His mind replays the moment over and over. The crippled bomber, the wounded crew. The choice. He should feel guilty. He should feel like a traitor. He let an enemy escape. More than that, he saved them. Any one of those 10 American airmen could return to bomb Germany, could kill German civilians, could extend the war, but he doesn't. Feel guilty? He feels right, clean, like he made the only choice a decent man could make. Still, he tells no one. Not his squadron mates, not his commander, not even his closest friends, because what he did was treason by any military definition, aiding the enemy, failing to engage, allowing an enemy bomber to escape. The penalty would be court-martial at minimum, execution at worst, and his family would carry the shame. So Franz Stigler files the memory away, locks it in a private place in his mind, and carries on with the war. He flies more missions, shoots down more bombers, ones that are armed, fighting back, legitimate military targets. He earns his Knight's Cross eventually, though not for that 28th kill. He survives the war, barely, flying until the very end. But he never forgets December the 20th, 1943. Never forgets the young American pilot with blood on his face, flying a dying aircraft on pure will. Never forgets the choice he made, the salute they exchanged, the moment of humanity in the middle of horror. Two men on opposite sides of a war, sworn to kill each other, choosing mercy instead, and both condemned to silence. Brown by orders, Stigler by survival instinct. The story that should be told, that deserves to be known, locked away in two memories, an ocean apart. It will stay locked for 47 years. The war grinds on for 18 more months after that December day in 1943. Charlie Brown flies more missions, though not as command pilot. The head wound and trauma earn him a rotation back to the States for recovery. He trains new crews, teaches young pilots the skills that kept him alive, never quite finding the words to explain the most important lesson, that sometimes survival depends on the mercy of strangers. He marries his sweetheart, a girl from back home who waited through the war. They settle in West Virginia, where Brown takes a job as a civil servant, working for the Department of Energy. It's quiet work, stable work, the kind of life a man builds when he's seen enough chaos to last several lifetimes. They have children, 4 of them, and Brown becomes the kind of father who's present, attentive, grateful for ordinary moments, because he knows how easily they could have been taken away. But he never stops thinking about the German pilot. At dinner tables, around campfires, during family gatherings, Brown tells the story. His kids grow up hearing about the German pilot who saved Daddy's life. His wife hears it so many times she can recite it herself. His friends, initially skeptical, eventually accept that something extraordinary happened that day, even if they don't fully understand it. Why do you think he did it? His daughter asks when she's old enough to understand. Brown considers this. He's been considering it for years. I think he saw us not as enemies, but as men, and he couldn't kill men who couldn't fight back. Simple as that. Do you think about him every day? Do you want to find him? More than anything. But I don't know his name. Don't know if he survived the war. Don't even know where to start looking. And for decades, that's where it stays. A story with no ending. A debt with no way to repay it. A mystery with no solution. Brown grows older. His hair goes grey. His children have children. The war recedes into history, black and white footage and fading memories. Veterans' reunions grow smaller each year as the greatest generation ages out. But Brown never forgets. The memory doesn't fade. If anything, it intensifies. As death approaches, as friends die, as the years stack up, the need to find that German pilots becomes urgent. It's unfinished business. It's a story that deserves an ending. It's a debt unpaid. 800 miles away, across the Atlantic, Franz Stigler survives the war. By millimeters and miracles. He flies until May 1945, until Germany collapses, until there's no more Luftwaffe, No more missions, no more war. He's shot down once more, wounded again, crash lands twice. He sees friends die, squadrons disappear. The entire German military machine grind itself to pieces against overwhelming Allied force. When the war ends, he's in southern Germany, 30 years old, decorated, skilled, and utterly without purpose. Germany is occupied, divided, destroyed. The Luftwaffe is dissolved. Fighter pilots aren't needed in peacetime, especially German fighter pilots, tainted by association with the regime that lost. Stigler works odd jobs for a while, trying to find a place in the new Germany. But Europe feels like a graveyard, every city a reminder of what was lost. In 1953, he makes a decision: emigrate, start over, put the war behind him, and build something new. He chooses Canada, Vancouver specifically, as far from Germany as he can get, while staying in a Western country. He anglicizes his life, learns to speak English without an accent, starts a small business. He marries a Canadian woman who knows his history but doesn't dwell on it. They build a quiet life in a quiet city, far from the rubble and memories. Stigler becomes, on paper, an ordinary Canadian businessman. He joins clubs, makes friends, pays taxes, votes, barbecues on weekends. He almost never talks about the war. When people learn he flew for the Luftwaffe, they get uncomfortable, asking questions that have no good answers. So he learns to deflect, to change subjects, to keep that chapter of his life closed. But like Brown, he never forgets December 20th, 1943. He doesn't tell many people. The story sounds too improbable, too much like self-aggrandizement. I saved an American bomber crew feels like a claim that invites skepticism, especially from a German veteran. People would ask why. They'd question his loyalty, his judgment, his story itself. Easier to stay silent. But in private moments, in quiet hours, he thinks about that young American pilot. Wonders if he made it home. Wonders if he survived the war. Wonders if he remembers, or if the head wound and trauma erased the memory. Wonders if the choice to show mercy was worth it, or if those 10 Americans went on to drop bombs that killed German civilians. Stigler decides it was worth it. Had to be. Because the alternative, living with the knowledge that he murdered helpless wounded men, would have destroyed something essential in him. Better to have shown mercy and lived with uncertainty than to have killed them and lived with certainty of his own inhumanity. His wife notices over the years that December 20th is always a quiet day for Franz. He's more contemplative, more distant. She asks once early in their marriage, and he tells her the story. She listens, amazed, and asks if he ever tried to find the American pilot. How? Stigler asks. I don't know his name, don't know what unit he flew with, don't even know if he survived. And even if I could find him, what would I say? Hello, I'm the enemy who didn't kill you. You could say thank you, she suggests. For what? For surviving, for making your choice worthwhile. Stigler considers this, but does nothing. The distance feels too great, the odds too long, the war too far in the past. You can't go back, you can only go forward. By the 1980s, both men are in their 60s, living separate lives on separate continents, connected only by a memory that won't fade. Brown in West Virginia, Stigler in Vancouver, both thinking about the other, both wondering, both carrying the weight of unfinished business. Brown's children notice his increasing obsession with the story. He tells it more frequently, with more detail, as if trying to preserve every moment before age steals it. One son asks, Dad, why don't you try to find him? I've thought about it, but where do I start? You could write to German veteran organizations, fighter pilot associations. Someone might know. Brown considers this. He's retired now, time on his hands, the urgency growing. His health isn't perfect. Heart problems, the legacy of stress and age. How many years does he have left? 10? 5? However many. It's not enough. He needs to find this man. Needs to say thank you. Needs to know the ending to a story that's defined his life. In 1986, he starts writing letters to German Luftwaffe veteran associations, to fighter pilot organizations, to historians who study aerial combat. The letters are careful, detailed, specific. I'm seeking a German fighter pilot who, on December 20th, 1943, escorted a badly damaged B-17 bomber from Bremen, Germany, to the North Sea instead of shooting it down. He flew a Messerschmitt 109. He saved my life and the lives of my crew. I would like to find him to express my gratitude. Most letters go unanswered. A few respond with polite skepticism. The story sounds too improbable, too Hollywood. Some suggest he might be misremembering, that trauma and time have distorted the memory. Brown persists. He knows what he saw. He knows what happened. Someone somewhere must know this. Pilot. Years pass. More letters. More silence. Brown begins to lose hope. Maybe the pilot died in the war. Maybe he doesn't want to be found. Maybe the memory is Brown's alone now. The other half of the story lost to time and silence. Then in 1989, Brown tries one more time. He writes to a newsletter for German fighter pilots, published by an association of Luftwaffe veterans. He includes every detail he remembers: the date, the location, the type of aircraft, the escort to the coast, the salute. He includes his address. He mails it off and tries not to hope too much. 4 months later, an envelope arrives from Vancouver, Canada. German stamps, neat handwriting. Brown opens it with shaking hands. "Dear Charles," it begins. "I was the pilot of the Messerschmitt." The letter is signed Franz Stigler. Brown reads it 3 times, unable to process that this is real, that after 46 years of wondering, the answer has found him. The letter is warm, detailed, confirming every aspect of Brown's memory. Stigler remembers the date, the crippled bomber, the decision not to shoot, the escort to the coast. He remembers the salute. He remembers everything. "I have thought about you often over the years," Stigler writes. "I wondered if you made it home. I'm glad you did. I made the only choice I could live with. I hope you understand." Brown sits at his kitchen table and cries. His wife finds him there, clutching the letter, and he can barely speak. "I found him," he manages. "After all these years, I found him. They arranged to meet. A veterans reunion in the United States. Brown will fly out. Stigler will fly in from Vancouver. After 46 years apart, 2 men who shared the most important 10 minutes of their lives will finally meet face to face, not as enemies, as brothers." The reunion happens in 1990 at a hotel in Seattle, Washington, neutral ground, halfway between West Virginia and Vancouver, a place where 2 old men can meet without the weight of history crushing them. Charlie Brown arrives first, nervous in a way he hasn't been since his first combat mission. He's 67 years old now, retired, grey-haired, a grandfather several times over. But waiting in that hotel lobby, he feels 21 again, flying at a crippled bomber, watching a German fighter pull alongside. His hands shake. His wife steadies him. "It'll be okay," she says. "This is a good thing." "What if he doesn't remember it the way I do?" Brown asks. "What if I've built this up too much in my head?" "Then you'll find out. But Charlie, you've waited 47 years for this. Whatever happens, you need to know." Franz Stigler arrives 15 minutes later. He's 68, still physically fit, still carrying himself with the posture of a fighter pilot, straight back, alert eyes, the bearing of a man who lived by split-second decisions. He walks into the lobby and stops, scanning faces, looking for someone he's never met but has thought about for half his life. There, eyes meet across the lobby. Recognition is instant, visceral, impossible to explain. They've never seen each other except through shattered plexiglass and cockpit glass, yet they know. They know. Brown walks towards Stigler. Stigler walks toward Brown. They meet in the middle of the lobby, 2 old men who survived a war and carried a secret for decades, and they embrace. Not a handshake, an embrace. Brown is crying. Stigler is crying. Everyone in the lobby is staring, confused, moved by something they don't understand but can feel. "I never thought I'd find you," Brown says, his voice breaking. "I never thought you'd look," Stigler responds. "After all these years, I thought maybe you'd forgotten." "Forgotten? I've thought about you every single day for 47 years. They sit in the hotel lounge, order coffee, neither of them drinks, and talk. They compare memories, and everything matches. The date, December 20th, 1943. The location, near Bremen. The damage to the B-17. The escort to the coast. The salute. Detail by detail, their memories align perfectly, confirming what both have known but never been able to prove. It really happened." "Why did you do it?" Brown asks. The question he's carried for nearly 5 decades. Stigler pauses, considering how to explain a decision that felt so simple in the moment, but has required a lifetime to understand. "I couldn't shoot you," he says finally. "You were defenseless. Your crew was wounded. Killing you would have been murder, not combat. My commander, Gustav Rödel, taught me, you are fighter pilots first, last, always, not executioners. You risked your life. If your commanders had found out, firing squad, probably, or at least court-martial disgrace. Yes, I knew the risk. Then why?" Stigler looks at Brown with eyes that have seen too much death, too much war, too much of humanity at its worst. "Because I had to be able to look in the mirror the next day. Because my brother August didn't survive the war, and I needed to honour his memory by staying decent. Because some things matter more than orders." He pauses. "Because it was the right thing to do." Brown reaches across the table and grips Stigler's hand. "You saved my life, my crew's lives. I've wanted to say thank you for 47 years. Thank you, thank you. You don't have to thank me. I did what any decent man would do. But not every man did. You did. That matters. They talk for hours. Brown describes the rest of the flight, the hour over the North Sea, the landing in England, the debriefing where intelligence officers told him to forget what happened. Stigler describes returning to base, the fuel warning light, the decision to stay silent to survive. They compare their post-war lives, Brown's family, Stigler's emigration, the separate paths that led them both to this moment. I have something for you, Brown says eventually. He pulls out a photograph, the famous photo of his B-17 after landing, showing the catastrophic damage. This is ye old pub after we landed. The ground crew couldn't believe it flew. Stigler studies the photo, seeing for the first time the full extent of the destruction. The shredded tail, the holes in the fuselage, the missing pieces. My God, he whispers. I knew it was bad, but this... Charlie, you kept this aircraft flying for over an hour with this damage. I had help from you. I just escorted you. You did the flying. You gave us a chance. Without you, the coastal guns would have finished us. Stigler shakes his head, still studying the photo. I'm glad I didn't shoot. Looking at this, seeing how destroyed you were. If I had shot, I'd have never forgiven myself. The reunion stretches into dinner, then drinks, then late-night conversation that covers everything. The war, their families, their regrets, their hopes. They discover they're similar men. Both pilots to their bones, both shaped by combat, both carrying the weight of survival when so many didn't survive, both grateful to have found each other finally, after so long. As the evening ends, they make a pact. They'll stay in touch. They'll visit each other. They'll tell their story together, preserving it for history, because it matters. It matters that in the middle of history's most destructive war, two enemies chose humanity over hatred. It matters that mercy existed even when everything's said to be merciless. It matters as proof that we're not defined by the worst of us, but by the choices we make in our hardest moments. They exchange addresses, phone numbers. They promise to visit soon. Stigler will come to West Virginia. Brown will come to Vancouver. Their wives exchange looks that say, our husbands have found something they've needed for decades. Let them have this. In the hotel parking lot, they embrace again. Two old men, former enemies, now brothers. The war is over. The silence is broken. The debt is acknowledged, even if it can never truly be repaid. You know what bothers me, Brown says, that we lost so much time. 47 years we could have known each other. We have time now, Stigler says. However much is left, we have it together. They shake hands one final time. The gesture formal, military, respectful. Then they go to their separate cars, their separate lives. No longer separate because the connection forged in December 1943 is finally acknowledged, finally real, finally shared. Brown drives back to his hotel and calls his children. I found him, he says, voice thick with emotion. I actually found him, and he remembered everything. He remembered me. Stigler drives back to Vancouver and tells his wife about the meeting. It was him, he says, amazed. After all these years, it was really him. And he's a good man, a really good man. Both men sleep better that night than they have in years. The unfinished business is finished. The story has an ending. The question has an answer. They found each other, and in finding each other, they found closure, gratitude, and friendship. A friendship forged in war, sustained by memory, and finally realized in peace. After the reunion, Charlie Brown and Franz Stigler don't just stay in touch, they become inseparable. For two men who spent 47 years apart, they make up for lost time with the urgency of people who know all time is finite. They talk on the phone weekly, sometimes daily, long conversations about everything and nothing. Grandchildren, health problems, memories, the news, aviation history. Brown will call Stigler to discuss a documentary he saw about the air war. Stigler will call Brown to share a memory that surfaced. They develop the easy intimacy of old friends, the kind of relationship where comfortable silence is as meaningful as conversation. They visit each other multiple times a year. Stigler flies to West Virginia, where Brown gives him tours of the countryside, introduces him to the local VFW post, shares family dinners. Brown flies to Vancouver, where Stigler shows him the mountains, the ocean, the life he built in Canada. Their wives become friends too, bonding over the shared experience of being married to men haunted by the same memory. But the most powerful moments come when they appear together at veterans' events, military reunions, and historical conferences. Word spreads about their story. The German fighter pilot and the American bomber pilot, enemies who became brothers. Organizers invite them to speak, and they accept, understanding that their story carries a message the world needs to hear. The first joint appearance is at an Air Force Association gathering in 1991. They stand on stage together, Stigler in a grey suit, Brown in his VFW cap, and tell the story from both perspectives. Brown describes the bomber mission, the devastating damage, the appearance of the German fighter. Stigler describes the interception, the moment of decision, the escort to safety. Their accounts match perfectly, two halves of the same memory finally joined. The audience sits in absolute silence, then erupts in applause that goes on for 5 minutes. Veterans are crying, historians are taking notes. Everyone recognizes they're witnessing something extraordinary. Proof that even in war, humanity can survive. After the presentation, veterans line up to meet them. American bomber crews shake Stigler's hand, thanking him for showing mercy when he could have killed. German veterans embrace Brown, grateful that someone is acknowledging that not all German pilots were monsters. The healing that happens in those conversations ripples outward, challenging simple narratives about heroes and villains. You represent something important, a historian tells them after one presentation. You represent the idea that war doesn't have to destroy everything decent in us, that individuals still make choices even under orders, that the enemy is still human. Brown and Stigler appear at the Air Force Museum in Dayton, Ohio, at the Smithsonian, at military academies where cadets learn about honor and duty. They're interviewed for documentaries, featured in magazines, profiled in newspapers. Their story spreads, becoming famous in military aviation circles, a counterpoint to the usual narratives of unrelenting combat. In 1992, a writer named Adam Makos hears their story and approaches them about a book. They're hesitant at first. Both men are private, not seeking fame or attention. But Makos convinces them, your story deserves to be preserved. In 50 years, there won't be any World War II veterans left. If you don't tell this story now, it dies with you. They agree. Over the next several years, Makos interviews them extensively, researches the historical records, reconstructs the events in meticulous detail. The result is A Higher Call, an incredible true story of combat and chivalry in World War II, published in 2012. The book becomes a bestseller, introducing their story to millions of readers worldwide. But for Brown and Stigler, the book is secondary to the friendship. What matters is the time they spend together, the conversations they share, the mutual understanding that comes from being the only two people in the world who lived through that specific moment. They vacation together, the four of them, Charlie and Jackie Brown, Franz and Hannah Stigler, taking trips to places neither man saw during the war. They visit Germany together, walking through rebuilt cities, visiting the sites where Stigler flew from. They visit England, standing on the runways where Brown's squadron was based, imagining the bombers taking off into the dawn. In Germany, Stigler takes Brown to his childhood home in Regensburg. They stand outside the house where Stigler grew up, and he talks about his brother August, about learning to fly, about the choices that led him to that December day in 1943. Brown listens, understanding that the mercy Stigler showed wasn't random. It was the product of a lifetime of choices, of values instilled by family and mentors, of a refusal to let war make him something he wasn't. In England, Brown shows Stigler the memorial at Seething, where the 379th Bomb Group is honoured. They stand before the plaque listing the names of men who didn't come home, and Brown points to names he knew: friends, squadron mates, kids who died over Germany. Stigler is quiet, then says, I shot down bombers, men like these. I wonder how many of them were like you, just doing their duty, hoping to go home. We were all just trying to survive, Brown says. You, me, all of us. The war made us enemies, but it didn't have to make us inhuman. Their friendship becomes a model for something larger, reconciliation between former enemies, proof that forgiveness is possible, evidence that war's hatreds don't have to last forever. Veterans from both sides seek them out, wanting to hear how two men who should have hated each other became brothers. The answer is always the same: by choosing to see each other as human beings first, enemies second. In private moments, Brown asks Stigler questions he never asked during the war. What was it like flying for the Luftwaffe? What did you think about the Nazi regime? How do you reconcile having fought for Germany? Stigler answers honestly. I didn't fight for the Nazis. I fought for Germany, for my squadron, for the man on my wing. I didn't choose the government. I was born into it. But I chose how I fought. I chose to maintain honour even when the cause was dishonourable. That's all any of us can do. Control our own choices. Brown understands. He flew for America, but he also questioned some of the bombing strategies, the civilian casualties, the moral compromises of total war. Neither man was naive about the conflicts they fought in, but both maintained their humanity within an inhuman situation. As they age into their 70s, then 80s, the urgency of their friendship intensifies. They know time is running out. Every phone call could be the last. Every visit could be the final one. They don't dwell on mortality, but it's always there. The unspoken awareness that this precious friendship was discovered late and will end too soon. Brown's health deteriorates first. Heart problems, complications from age, and the stresses of his wartime injuries. Stigler calls more frequently, checking on him, making sure he's okay. "You survived the war, Charlie," Stigler says during one call. "You survived getting shot to pieces. You're not allowed to die from something as mundane as age." Brown laughs, but they both know the body can only take so much. The years accumulate. In 2007, Brown's health declines seriously. He's hospitalized, then released, then hospitalized again. Stigler flies to West Virginia to visit, and they sit together in Brown's living room, two old men who've been through too much to waste time on small talk. "I've been thinking," Brown says, "about how lucky we are. Not just that we survived the war, but that we found each other. How many other stories like ours are out there, lost because the people involved never connected?" "Too many," Stigler says, "but we didn't lose ours. That's what matters. Thank you, Franz, for everything, for saving me then, and for being my friend now. Thank you, Charlie, for looking for me, for not giving up, for making my choice worthwhile." They sit in comfortable silence, two men who no longer need words to communicate. They've said everything that matters. The rest is just being present, being there, honouring the bond forged in war and strengthened in peace. That's their final visit. Stigler flies back to Vancouver, and they talk on the phone a few more times, but both know what's coming. Franz Stigler dies on March 22nd, 2008, at the age of 92. Natural causes, surrounded by family, at peace. When Brown hears the news, he sits in his living room and cries, not for loss, but for gratitude. "He was the best man I ever knew," Brown tells his family. "He saved my life twice, once in the war, and again by being my friend." Charlie Brown dies 8 months later on November 24th, 2008, at the age of 87. His family says he was ready, that he'd accomplished everything he needed to. He'd survived the war, he'd raised a family, he'd found the German pilot, he'd said thank you. There was nothing left unfinished. At Brown's funeral, Hannah Stigler attends, representing Franz. She sits with the Brown family, no longer separated by nationality or history. Just two families joined by the friendship of two extraordinary men. The brotherhood lasted 18 years, from their reunion in 1990 to Stigler's death in 2008. Not nearly long enough for either man, but long enough to matter, long enough to change both their lives, long enough to prove that friendship can transcend anything: war, nationality, history, even time itself. Franz Stigler died on March 22nd, 2008. Charlie Brown died on November 24th, 2008. 8 months apart, as if Brown had been waiting just long enough to know his friend had gone ahead, then followed. Their families, watching both men decline, understood. They'd been connected for so long that separation, even in death, couldn't last. The obituaries noted their military service, their families, their accomplishments, but what mattered most was the single line that appeared in both. He will be remembered for his humanity during war, and the friendship that followed. Their story didn't die with them. If anything, it grew stronger. A Higher Call, published in 2012, became a bestseller and introduced their story to millions who'd never heard of the incident. Readers wrote letters to Adam Makos, the author, describing how the book moved them, changed them, made them reconsider what they thought they knew about war and honour, and the human capacity for mercy. Military professionals used the book in ethics classes. Religious leaders referenced it in sermons about forgiveness. Teachers assigned it to students studying World War II. The story resonated because it offered something increasingly rare: moral clarity in a morally complex war. World War II is often called the Good War, but its reality was complicated. Strategic bombing of civilians, atomic weapons, Dresden, Hiroshima. Brown and Stigler's story cuts through that complexity with a simple truth. Individuals still make choices. Orders and strategies and national interest don't absolve us of moral responsibility. We choose how we fight. We choose whether to remain human or become something else. The US Air Force Academy now teaches their story in its leadership curriculum. Cadets study the moment when Stigler chose not to shoot, analysing the decision-making process, the moral courage required, the professional risk involved. The lesson isn't just about mercy, it's about independent judgment, about knowing when to disobey orders that violate your principles, about maintaining honour when everything invites dishonour. Fighter pilots, in particular, have adopted their story as a touchstone. In a profession that values aggression, technical skill, and combat effectiveness, Brown and Stigler represent something deeper, the warrior ethos at its best. The idea that being a fighter pilot isn't just about killing efficiently, but about discriminating between legitimate targets and murder. That being good at war doesn't mean being comfortable with atrocity. In Germany, Stigler's story helped address a complex legacy. Post-war Germany struggled with how to honor military service while rejecting Nazism. How do you acknowledge that Wehrmacht soldiers fought bravely while condemning the cause they served? Stigler provides an answer. You can fight honorably for a dishonorable regime if you maintain your own moral code. He didn't choose his government, but he chose how he fought. He served in the Luftwaffe, but refused to become a war criminal. That distinction matters. Museums have incorporated their story. The Air Force Museum in Dayton features a display about the incident, with photographs of both men, excerpts from their testimony, and a recreation of how the encounter might have looked. Visitors stop, read, and stand silent for a moment, processing the idea that an enemy showed more compassion than expected, that mercy existed even in total war. Their families have preserved the legacy. Brown's children and grandchildren tell the story to younger generations, keeping it alive as family history and moral instruction. Stigler's relatives do the same, proud that their father figure's moment of conscience is now recognized worldwide. The two families stay in touch, united by the friendship of two men who should have been enemies. But the legacy extends beyond institutions and families. It lives in the countless individuals who've heard the story and been changed by it. Veterans who realized the enemy they fought were also human beings doing their duty. People carrying grudges who reconsidered forgiveness. Anyone facing a moral choice, wondering whether to follow orders or conscience, remembering that one German pilot chose conscience and never regretted it. The story challenges our assumptions about war. We want neat categories, good guys and bad guys, heroes and villains. Brown and Stigler complicate that. They prove that enemies can be honourable, that showing mercy to an enemy doesn't make you a traitor, that the best parts of humanity can survive even in war's worst moments. These are uncomfortable truths because they force us to acknowledge complexity when we prefer simplicity. In an era of increasing polarization, where enemies are demonized and compromise is seen as weakness, their story offers an alternative model. Two men on opposite sides of a global conflict, chosen by circumstance to be enemies, decided in a moment of crisis to see each other as human beings first. They could have let war define them. Instead, they defined themselves through mercy and later through friendship. What would have happened if Stigler had shot? He'd have earned his Knight's Cross, been celebrated as a hero, served Germany's immediate tactical interests. But he'd have carried the weight of murdering helpless wounded men for the rest of his life. The glory would have turned to ash. The medal would have meant nothing. He'd have lost something essential, the ability to respect himself. What would have happened if Brown had never searched for Stigler? The story would have died with them. Two men carrying a secret, a debt unpaid, a question unanswered. The world would never have known that mercy existed that day. The example would have been lost, the lesson unlearned. But they both made the right choices. Stigler chose mercy. Brown chose gratitude. And in making those choices, they left behind something more valuable than military victories or tactical successes. They left behind proof that we're better than our worst moments, that honour exists even in horror, that the bonds between human beings can transcend even war. Today, their names are linked forever. Type Charlie Brown and Franz Stigler into any search engine and thousands of results appear. Their story has been told in books, documentaries, articles, podcasts, and presentations. It's become a permanent part of World War II history, military ethics, and the ongoing conversation about what it means to be human under impossible circumstances. The lesson isn't complicated. See the enemy as human. Maintain your principles even under orders. Choose mercy when you can. Take responsibility for your own moral choices. These are simple truths, but profoundly difficult to live by when everything around you says to be merciless, to follow orders without question, to dehumanize the enemy. Stigler and Brown lived those truths. Not perfectly. They were human, flawed, products of their times. But in the moment that mattered most, when everything was on the line, they chose correctly. They chose humanity. And because they chose correctly, and because they found each other 47 years later, and because they shared their story before they died, we know that mercy is always possible, even in war, even between enemies, even when orders say otherwise. Their legacy is the knowledge that we always have a choice. We're never just following orders. We're never just doing our duty. We're always making moral decisions, even in the middle of war, even under pressure, even when it costs us. And those decisions define us more than any medal, any victory, any cause we fight for. Franz Stigler chose mercy on December 20th, 1943, and that choice echoes forward through time, inspiring others to make similar choices, proving that the best parts of humanity can survive anything. Charlie Brown chose gratitude and persistence, searching for 47 years to say thank you, proving that debts of honor matter, that memory serves a purpose, that stories deserve to be told. Together they proved that war doesn't have to destroy everything, that enemies can become brothers, that the hard choices are the ones worth making, and that long after the shooting stops, long after the war's end, long after we're gone, the choices we make in our hardest moments will define what we leave behind. They left behind hope. They left behind proof. They left behind a story that says, even now, even in our darkest times, you can choose to be decent. You can choose mercy. You can choose to remain human when everything invites you to become something less. And that choice matters. It always matters. It will always matter.